Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good. Today I've got a very special guest. I'm really excited for this one because I've actually watched Elliot's stuff on the Arsenal Vision podcast for a little while with Clive and Tim, and it's amazing what you're doing, and it's finally really good to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and I'm not upset that you asked Clive on before you asked me on. I would ask Clive on before I'd ask me on, but thanks for having me on, Sil.
Oh, don't be silly. Yeah, Clive's lovely and it's really good to have you on. But yeah, I'm really excited to chat today. I mean, it feels really nice knowing that the Premier League's coming back. I mean, it's for me, I've kind of found the summer a bit boring. I know England have been playing, but it's not quite Arsenal, so it would be amazing to have them back in our life again. But I wanted just to ask you a bit about the transfer window because I know there's obviously a lot of time left, it's not ended yet. We've obviously signed Calafiori, which I think a lot of us know he's going to be a great signing. But at this moment in time, like, what are your thoughts on sort of also kind of the players? I know Nketiah, hopefully, we might move him on, but we've not really let many players go either. I know Smith Rowe's left. But I just want to get your overall thoughts so far in like the transfer window.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to think, right? We've made one signing that I'm really excited about. I
Yeah.
think Calafiori is maybe a better player than people appreciate. A
Mhm.
lot of people got to know him in the Euros this summer, but I think we did a scouting video on him. We got to look at some of his work from prior to the Euros, and he's a really front-footed defender who can
Yeah.
add a lot going forward. And I thought it was interesting that Mikel said following the Lyon game in the Emirates Cup that he will add a lot in attack. So I think there's a lot more to come from him once he gets up to speed. But sometimes I think the best way to evaluate the transfer window is to take stock of what everybody else is doing as
Yeah.
well to understand where you fit into it. And whether it's City or Liverpool,
Mm.
who are really, I think, the sort of big three with us right now in terms of expectation of the table, it's
Yeah.
been a challenging summer. Apart from Chelsea, who seem to think that the goal is to have the most players possible, everybody else seems to be pretty jammed up. And
Mm.
so I do expect that there'll be late movement. I do expect that
Yeah.
there's probably a few dominoes that have to fall for that movement to start. But it's pretty clear to me we have a couple of outgoings that have to get done. The Nketiah deal not happening in Marseille,
Yeah.
a little troubling. And then that might precipitate us going and doing things. It wouldn't surprise me, though. You think back to when we signed Mesut Ozil, a surprise transfer at the end of the window that was made possible by other moves. This window may be one that's more about opportunism and seeing what really exciting player might be available late in the window as a circumstance of other moves.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, by all means, I don't think, we're finished with what we're going to do. I mean, like you said, you look around at other teams, and I think, I mean, we know the squad already is amazing, and I do feel like we're ready going into the season. But I think for me, I've always said that I'd really love a striker, and I'm not saying we won't do it. I'm not sort of confident as well that we're going to buy a striker. Like, for you, looking at the window so far regarding players we might bring in, what would you say our next position we should really focus on is?
So I always think adding an attacker can have the most immediate
Mm.
impact because nothing changes games like goals, right? Someone who can
Yeah.
provide goals to other players or create goals themselves can influence the game in the most dramatic way. But I do think that midfield is the part of the
Mm.
pitch that has the biggest chance to wreck our season if it doesn't go well. Because
Yeah.
aside from Rice and Odegaard, who are brilliant, we have two over 30-year-old midfielders who we're depending on to provide us
Yeah.
probably a lot of minutes. And if Rice is deployed at the 8 most along with Odegaard, then it really is going to be Party and Jorginho trying to share 60 plus games this season. And that to me is where we could very clearly stand to upgrade. So while striker would be fun or another attacker would be fun, we have 5 good ones: Jesus,
Yeah.
Trossard, Kai, Saka, Martinelli. It's not perfect. It's good. We still have Nketiah and Nelson. In midfield, behind the 230-year-olds, we don't have a 6
Mm.
unless Rice is going to take that role. So um, it's a complicated answer, but I would say a really great striker could
Yeah.
change our fortunes the most. But midfield is the area where I think we have the most vulnerability.
Yeah, I think the midfield is an interesting one as well because I always say if Rice ever got injured, I think we'd be in big trouble. I feel like he's sort of like the glue that sticks the team together in a way. You've seen
Yeah.
that last season. Like, he was absolutely incredible. He did a lot better than what I thought he did, and I think the season is only going to get better. But I think as well with Partey, I mean, you know, I always say if he stays, I'll be happy, but if he left, I wouldn't mind either because I think the injury record he's having is obviously tough. But I think with Partey, like next season coming up, do you expect him to be a lot more fitter? Because for me, I think he's an amazing player, and when he's in that team at his best, we're like a different Arsenal. But at the same time, you can't rely on Partey, unfortunately, because his injury record isn't too good.
Yeah, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same things and expecting a different result. Um, we keep relying on Party and we keep not being able to rely on Party. And I expect that if we rely on Party again, we will continue to not be able to rely on Thomas Party. So
Mm,
look, there's also two components. On the ball, I still think he looks pretty much like he always has. I think
yeah.
off the ball, he looks a little bit less mobile and a little bit less, just a little bit less agile than he has when he first arrived.
Yeah.
And so combine that with the injury concerns, I do think that this is a diminished Party now, and a limited Thomas Party. So, if we were playing the Champions League final tomorrow, I'd probably start Jorginho over Party,
Mm,
just in terms of the way he plays the game and what I think he does for us. Um, if we could sign someone of Party's capabilities at 26, 27, that would be the ideal, and like a Bruno Guimaraes kind of player was someone that
yeah.
I was really excited about. But I mean, look, it seems pretty clear that we're going to go into the season with Party in the plan. I just hope that he's not the primary plan because we've been burned by that too many times. Let's not do that again.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of established now that we can't really, rely on him to be there when we need him to be. And I think as well, like I think Jorginho, I would say he's sort of underrated regarding the team. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't necessarily say he would be a starter all the time, but I think he does give you that balance in midfield. Like, because I know Partey, don't get me wrong, he's great, love him, but I know sometimes when he's having like a poor game or being a bit sloppy, Jorginho can come in and balance that. So I think him being here is obviously really good, but I think it's just going to be exciting to see kind of who we do bring in the summer. I mean, I know we mentioned Nketiah before, and I think a lot of us as fans, I mean, I can only talk on myself, but I think a lot of us know that, he hasn't had much game time. He probably is going to leave. I mean, Bournemouth, for me, I think that would be a great team for him to go to. Solanke moving to Spurs. I mean, do you see that move happening? And how much money would you say Nketiah is actually worth?
So that's a really tough one. So the first thing I'll say is that the links to Bournemouth have that quality of feeling almost too convenient. It's like, oh, here's a lower table club that just sold their striker and we have a striker. So obviously they're going to want him. Well, I don't know that it's obvious they're going to want him, and we'll have to see if that develops. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, right? Because
Yeah.
they have a need now in that position. Whether or not they think he's the guy remains to be seen. Um, I I think it's hard to assess his value. We have to remember this is a 25-year-old who has really not consistently played
Mm,
football for years. He's had some spot opportunities. He's done reasonably well with those opportunities, but ultimately, one of the reasons teams will pay a big fee for a fringe player at another club is the belief that they might be getting a developing player who becomes worth
mm,
more in the future. So if you look at Carvalho, I think it's Fabio Carvalho from Liverpool, who just made a move. And a lot of people look at that and say, well, if he can make that move, why can't we get a move for Nketiah? Well, there's sort of multiple dimensions for that sort of thing.
yeah.
The first is the age of the player, right? He's only 21. So you say, oh, if we buy him and he improves, maybe he becomes that £100 million player. You don't have that with Nketiah at 25. The other thing is that Eddie Nketiah is rumored to be on around £100,000 a week. Maybe it's less than that, depending on signing bonuses, but that is a wage that at the lower end of the table is considerable. They may have one player or even no players on that kind of wage. So you're giving them the equivalent of star money. At an Arsenal, that kind of money is no problem. But when you try to move the player,
Yeah.
essentially think about it this way: there's a pool of money to buy a player. That pool is going to go into two things: the fee and the wages, forgetting agents, fees, and
Yeah.
all that. If the wages are higher, the pool of money for the fee is lower. So I think anything north of 20 million is extremely fair for an Eddie Nketiah who is now in his prime, hasn't
Mm,
played much, has a pretty big wage, and likely isn't going to generate the ability to
mm.
sell on for big money in 3 seasons time when he's 28 years old. So I would say anything north of 20 million would be a very good fee.
Yeah, I mean, I think for him as well, I think it's important he kind of gets that game time because, listen, going into the season, I think as well, I I obviously always say I respect everything he's done for us because don't get me wrong, that season when Jesus was injured, he did take over and did pretty well. But I do think, on both parts it's time to move on. So I'm with you. I think that price is pretty much fair, and I think Bournemouth, if he went there, I think that would be a good move. But it's quite convenient now. It's sort of helped us. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what does happen. I wanted just to speak on Calafiori as well. Going back to transfer news
Yeah.
because we did get to see a glimpse of him, and honestly, I love what I saw from him.
Hmm.
I know pre-season is always a lot different to like the Premier League, but I think it's great for him to have these minutes. I mean, what have you made of him so far, and what do you kind of expect him to bring to the team?
So he's an interesting one. Obviously, there's going to be some adaptation time that he needs. I don't think
Yeah,
23 minutes or whatever in a preseason game are going to be sufficient for him to start against Wolves, for example. But there's a few things. First of all, I think he can play left center back. I think we have to just keep in the back of our mind, not as a big worry, but just as a reminder that at the start of last season, there were some thoughts that maybe Gabriel Magalhaes had his head turned by Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
He was one of the earlier players to sign a new contract at Arsenal before the next round of players, and he may be on a bit less money than he feels he's worth in the context of his importance. I love Gabriel, but so that there may be some future planning there just in case. Um, he can play left center back, and I think if we're moving on from a Kivior was probably
yeah.
seen as a guy who could play left center back and left back, and Calafiori now becomes an upgraded version of that, right? We don't know who our first choice left back is going to be. Between Tomiyasu, when fit, Calafiori, Timber, and Zinchenko, we have four excellent options, all with different qualities. What I think people may not appreciate about Calafiori is how good he is carrying the ball forward. I
Yeah.
think he led the, I want to say Europe or something, in some very weird stat, like the number of chances created from carries into the opposition half or opposition final third, something like that. The point is he's confident on the ball. He's going to want to bring the ball forward, and he's going to want to either take a chance for himself or create a chance for someone else. So he's big, he's broad, he's strong defensively.
Mhm.
But I think we're going to see a player on the ball that's a lot more cultured than maybe people appreciate, and a lot more
Mm.
attack minded than people appreciate.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to see what he brings, but I think, like you said, I mean, the game at the weekend, I don't really expect him to start straight away. I think
No.
I think it'd be sensible to kind of ease him in. And it sort of brings me on to Timber as well because I really like Timber a lot. I think he's
Yeah.
amazing, but I also feel like with his injuries that he's had, I know that he has played a few games with the academy and he did well, getting his fitness back up. But do you kind of expect the season to be more of kind of him playing gradually getting back to where he should be? Because I know that left back position, there's a lot of players that could play there. I know Sinchenko is still here, and a lot of us, know defensively he does struggle, and I just kind of wonder long term, like what the best option would be at left back.
Your guess is as good as mine, right? I think what's hard is with Timber and Calafiori, we don't really know what we have. We know
Mm,
what we've seen at other places, but Timber played two halves of football for Arsenal ever, and Calafiori has played no football for Arsenal ever in a competitive situation. So that's still speculation. Tomiyasu, look, let's say everybody was 100% fit all the time, Tomiyasu is a phenomenal player because he gives you so many qualities you can use across the entire back four. He wins headers. He's excellent in 1v1 defending. He's just good enough on the ball and going forward to give you a bit of that attacking dynamic. I love that player. He just can't stay fit.
yeah,
Timber, I think we have to expect coming off an ACL repair that he's going to have a stop-start season. I think that first season coming back, it's stop-start, right? It's those compensation injuries, a bit of a thigh, a bit of a hamstring, a bit of a load-bearing issue or weight-bearing issue like he has with his foot right now. So that's down to Zinchenko and Calafiori, and I think we have maybe no player in the entire team that's as progressive in his passing and effective in his progressive passing as Zinchenko. The data shows that for sure. But we also know that concentrating defensively isn't always his strongest suit, and especially
yeah.
after the hour mark. I would anticipate that as soon as Calafiori gets up to speed, Mikel's
Mhm.
going to want to try to get him in there. Because I think what would scare Mikel is going to Spurs and going to City with Zinchenko as the fullback. Now, he's played those games, and we've won those games with him there, so I don't
Yeah.
want to put him down. But if Mikel can get a more defensive option up to speed,
Mm.
a bigger option, a physical option like Calafiori, I think he'll want to do that. And I think there's enough time because especially there's an international break in there as well. So
Yeah.
I would expect Zinchenko to start the season and play well. He's looked a
Mm.
lot more like himself in this preseason than I think
Yeah.
he did last season when he played. So I wouldn't be terrified of him starting, but I think going away to Spurs and away to City, I'd much
Mm.
rather have a stronger defender.
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel quite, confident with our start, our first game, Wolves. I mean, I think that's an okay game to ease us in. I mean, I think with that game, I wouldn't really mind if Zinchenko played in that position. But like you said, when we're playing against the Spurs, which is always a tough game, no matter if we're better than them currently, it's always a tough one. And Man City for me, it's going to be really tough. So I think in those games, I'd probably at least maybe see Timber or California. I don't really mind, but I mean, you mentioned Tomiyasu as well. I really love him, but he knows it himself. His injury, he gets injured quite a lot, and it's a
Yeah.
shame because he's a very special player. But I think at left back position, I'm really glad that we've really sort of tried to sort that out because I know for me last season, I didn't necessarily see any weaknesses in the team because we were so good. But if I had to pick something that I wanted to kind of change, I'm really glad Arteta's sort of saw that this summer and thought I need to change that, which I'm really happy about that. And obviously the season's coming up. Pre-season, I know, like we said, it's very different compared to actual Premier League season because there's a lot more pressure on you, and we obviously really want to win the league. But from what you've sort of seen pre-season wise, would you say we're ready going into the new season?
Yes. With a couple of caveats, with a couple of
Yeah,
things that I'm curious about. I think we're ready. We look like Arsenal. Our press looks good. Our set pieces look good. I think we look good in all phases of play, and that's not a surprise. The thing that's difficult is I think this is the first season of the last three of this and prior where we have this many questions about who is going to be the primary option at a certain position.
yeah.
Right. And so now that's a good thing. It means we've strengthened the squad. We've added to the squad. There's more options. But whether it's Martinelli or Leo Trossard on the left,
Mm,
I think is a question. Whether it'll be Jesus at center forward and Kai at 8 or Kai at center forward and Declan Rice at 8 is a question. And if it's that, then is it Partey or Jorginho at 6, which is a question. I think going into the season, there's also maybe a tiny little bit of a question of Bukayo Saka is fully fit and up to speed. Do we want to throw him in right away against Wolves or maybe
yeah,
give him 30 minutes against Wolves and really try to bring him along for the bigger games that are coming? And then there's the left back question. I assume it'll be Zinchenko for now, but whether that's where we want to
yeah.
go with it in the next few games depends. So there's a lot of, I think we look good and we look ready technically and with our game model.
Mm,
But I think in terms of understanding which partnerships and which lineups we want to use as our primary option, that's still a little up in the air. I thought Jesus looked great this preseason.
yeah.
Still the same sort of could be better in front of goal issues, which will probably always be the case. But will Mikel have the confidence when the
Mm,
games matter to start Jesus up front and use Kai at left 8? I'm
mm,
curious. So very ready, but still some
yeah.
personnel questions that I think could stand to be ironed out a bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's obviously been really nice to see us back in pre-season, and I completely agree. I think I always say if we lose, never get too upset because it is pre-season game. But I always think it's a good chance to see how the players are fitness-wise, if they're ready, and also a really good opportunity for the youth players to get those minutes. And I really hope we can see more of those youth players get some minutes, whether that's in the cup games or when we're sort of winning, and we can give them that chance. And I'm really looking forward to Arsenal, coming back. I wanted to just speak on the Wolves game. I mean, for me, I think it's a good game. Not obviously going to say we'll like thrash them. I just think with how we're playing, I think we should be comfortable enough to kind of beat them. I wanted just to also ask, like, what sort of starting lineup would you see? Because I know you mentioned about the likes of Martinelli and Trossard. It's someone asked me the other day on my channel, who would you start? And I have an argument for both. It's kind of hard to choose. I know there's Saka as well. He obviously, I know he sort of might need to get his fitness back up. He might, play in the Euros a lot. So just maybe tell me how you're feeling about the game and what sort of lineup you'd like to see.
I think it's a tough game. I think Gary O'Neil is a really talented manager,
Yeah.
and I think that he has them playing better football than they did once upon a time when they were a very sort of dull defensive team that didn't really move the ball forward much. But the fact that they've lost Pedro Neto, as much as I don't like seeing him go to Chelsea, that's an advantage for us that we don't have to face him. I think he is a big threat
Mm.
there. I think given how quickly this game comes up in our preparation and given how quickly big games come up after that, my instinct is that Mikel is going to err on the side of caution. And by caution, what I mean is go with what he knows worked at the end of last season. So I
Yeah.
think it'll be Leo, Kai, and Saka. I think it'll be Rice, Odegaard, and Jorginho.
Mm.
And I think it'll be Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, White, and Raya.
Mm.
Now, do I think that is the lineup we'll be using 2 months from now? I don't. I
Mm.
think Martinelli has a great chance to even come back in for like Villa because Villa play a high line and you have to have some pace in
Yeah.
behind, I think, against Villa. I also think he loved using Kai in the 8 against Villa to generate those late runs in behind, right? So maybe you use
Mm.
Jesus as a backboard and you play Kai in or you play Martinelli in. So I don't think the lineup I just listed is written in ink for the next, the first 4 games or 5
Mm.
games or anything like that. But I think for a home game against a team we should beat
Mm.
with a lot of things still to figure out as a team, I don't think he's going to want to deviate much from what was just a very effective, reliable group to put out there at the end of last season. So I think it'll look a lot like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a sort of lineup that, we could all be happy with. I think, like we said, we've got other tougher games coming up, and if it'd be good as well, like you said, with Calafiori or Timber, whoever we decide to play in those tougher games, we can give them more minutes to build, help them with their fitness. But I completely agree. I think I'd really love to see Havertz play. I mean, I know Jesus has obviously been quite impressed. I've been quite impressed with him pre-season, and I do worry about Jesus as well, injuries this season as well. We do have a lot of players that do suffer those injuries, but I think it'd be nice to see Trossard and Saka play, and the midfield I completely agree with. I think Jorginho would be a great fit for that. Um, but yeah, I think with the left back position in this game, I don't think we need to worry too much because I'm not saying it will be an easy game, of course not. I know it'll be tough, but I think for now this would be probably the right thing to do. And I know throughout the season our lineup probably will change, especially if we have injuries or the left back position. But it'll be interesting to see towards the end of the season how he will be kind of a left back. I reckon Calafiori will probably be that guy, and we have bought him for that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see with that. And I wanted just to ask you about those fixtures that we have coming up. I mean, for me, I do get nervous when I think of us playing against Spurs or
Hmm.
Man City, but I also kind of see it as maybe it's a good chance to get those games over and done with and, hopefully start off the season on like a positive note. But how do you feel about having a few tough games early on?
I mean, it's scary, of course, but the thing we have to remember is it's just as scary for them, maybe more scary, right? They're not
Yeah.
going to be any more prepared than
Mm.
we are necessarily. Um, these are teams that are still adjusting and changing and updating. I mean, how is Solanke going to be fully up to speed with Spurs by the time we play them? Or is he still going to be in a bit of an integration period?
Yeah.
Manchester City just traditionally don't start as well as they finished, and we have played at the Etihad coming out of the March international break now. 2 seasons on the trot, and I think that is about the worst time you can play Manchester City. Now we're getting them at the time where they're usually not totally settled, and everyone's going to be doing their business late this summer, it looks like. So I don't know how integrated any new pieces would be for them. So while it's nerve-wracking to have those games early because there's almost a sense of like you could drop points in those 3 away games and feel like the title's gone before you even got started. That would be hyperbole. It's not the case, but you
Yeah.
can feel that way. But ultimately, I would try to get my big away fixtures out of the way as
Mm.
early as possible because I think that is the part of the season where you are most likely to face teams that are vulnerable. Injury timing aside, you just can't time that sort of thing. You don't know.
Mm. Yeah.
And then it means that they have to come to you later in the season when there's fixture congestion and they might be short players and you really know what you're doing and you have the chance to inflict maximum damage. So I think I'd prefer it this way is my thinking.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, obviously, the first game, I'm kind of happy with it of them because it could, start like great. But I think with Man City, like you said, I know towards the end, they just go really good. They start off a bit slow and then they pick up the pace, and it's so hard to be that because last season I honestly thought we were going to do it, but then towards the end, they're able to do it. So I'd rather like play them early on, so to get it over with as well. I think obviously for them as well, like you said, it will be tough for them coming against us, because I know how incredible we have been in the last few seasons, and I think we're in a really good place. But I think, like you said, I mean the Spurs game as well. I think that would be a lot more tougher this season. I think they've obviously made a few more signings as well, but I think these games are obviously, the team know how tough they will be. But I think we're in a really good place to kind of, deal with it. And I think from what I've seen in pre-season defensively as well, I've been pretty impressed. So I'm really excited to see kind of how that goes. But um, I wanted just to ask you a bit about going to the season. Like for me, obviously, don't get me wrong, I love everything about the team and the memories we make along the way, the culture, how incredible it is, and Arteta does deserve all of that praise in the club. And for me, I've honestly never seen us win the league, and I'm just like, I really want to see it happen.
Yeah.
But for you, like going to the season, do you feel like winning something has to be like a priority? I mean, I know the team will always want to win things, but I know recently we've kind of struggled to get that over the line.
That's a really, really difficult question, because the obvious answer is, of course. Of
Yeah,
course, I want to win things, right? Of course. But what I can say is the last 2 seasons have been two of the most enjoyable seasons I've
yeah,
experienced as an Arsenal supporter since probably 2003. So 21 years of football. And I think the last 2 seasons are my two favorite in that 21-year period. And we didn't win anything. I can think back to FA Cup winning seasons that I did not remotely enjoy as much as I did these. And I think this is where we have to be a little bit thoughtful.
mhm,
We're obsessed with Arsenal, right? We orient our life around Arsenal. My whole life is built around the Arsenal fixtures. Every 3 days I watch Arsenal play.
yeah,
If you gave me the option, like to have Manchester United season last season, where every 3 days I'm being humiliated and miserable, and there's infighting and there's complaining and there's frustration and there's anger, and then what do you know? There's one big moment of joy in May. I mean, I'd take the moment of joy, but I would
yeah,
not want that season. I would not want to live through the humiliation and the frustration and the
mm,
bad football and the bad results and watching incoherent players, seem totally disinterested. So we yes, you want to win things so that you
mm,
can have the bragging rights and have the glory and celebrate. But I do think in football, given that it's 10 months
mhm,
of the year, the journey is so important. And so to say you'd be willing, like if you offered to me right now, so if you said, I'll give you the League Cup and the FA Cup and Arsenal finish 8th, I am not taking that. I don't want to
mhm,
live through that season. I don't want to live through the doubt and the questions. There'd probably be injuries. We wouldn't be winning a lot. I would much rather go again. If we get 90 points this season,
mhm.
and that's all you can promise me right now, I'll take the 90 points and see what happens at the end of the season. And I'm sure I will love this season just as much as I have the prior two if we hit 90 points again.
Yeah, do you know what is I agree, because when we were like eighth twice, I'll say the second time when we were eighth, because I know Arteta kind of the first season
Mhm.
it was sort of a bit unfair on him. But finishing eighth, I would used to think I would kill to finish in that top four. I mean, finishing second, now it's obviously we know we want to go that step further, but I think, you look at Man United season, like you said, I mean they have been a bit of a mess last season, and you know you look at us now, like the players are so much togetherness, which we wanted for a very long time. And I think, I wouldn't take that away. Obviously, I'd love us to win an FA Cup. I love an FA Cup, but I would always take those memories that we've had throughout the season and how together we are as a team. But I think going to the season, I do think we can win something. I mean, I've always said, if we finish second, won an FA Cup, I wouldn't complain with that. I'd be over the moon. But I think it's so hard now to compete with Man City, because, like we've said, they might start off bad, but then they start to pick up the pace. And I think for us, I believe personally we can win the league. I think we've just got to kind of win those sort of games, whether that's against the Villa, the Fulham, that we kind of didn't pick up those points against last season. But do you feel like we can win the league? I know a lot of it can maybe depend as well on who we bring in as well.
It's so hard to say if we can win the league in a league where the team that you're really trying to overhaul can get to 100 points, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you said to me, we're going to get 99 points this season, I'd assume we're going to win the league. But as City have proven, that even that's not a guarantee.
yeah,
So we absolutely can win the league. But in order for that to happen, City can't have that devastating, destroy everybody, run away with it 97, 98, 99 point season. And I don't think they will, for the record.
Yeah.
Obviously, that means, last season we took 4 points off them. I would absolutely bite your hand off to take 4 points off them again. I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
6 is better. 4 is fine. 3 is doable. Below that, then I think you really put yourself in a difficult position because you've got to make up ground in other games. And it's hard enough
Yeah.
without having that disadvantage. So yes, we can win the league. I think we're absolutely good enough, even with no signings. We're not going to be worse than last season, I wouldn't think. And last season we went to 89 points. At least our squad's not worse. So
Yeah.
yes, we can do it. But some of it, whenever you're talking about
Mhm.
Manchester City, is down to what they
Do, yeah.
produce. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard, because I look at the points we got last season and, that is good, you can't take that away from Arsenal. But I think with Man City, you can't predict, how many points they're gonna get. But I think as well, finishing last season, I just felt so proud. I know a lot of us might have felt disappointed, but I just felt, Man City are just too good. You got to be perfect to compete with them. But I really hope we can do it and hopefully win silverware. But Elliot, thank you so much for coming on. It's been like such an honor to have you on. I've really enjoyed this chat.
It's an honor to be asked on, and I hope to do it again. Thanks, Soph.
Oh, definitely. We'll definitely do something again throughout the season. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone that are watching this back, as this is a pre-recorded show. And please don't forget to smash the like button to do subscribe, and do also subscribe to Elliot's channel, the Arsenal Vision podcast, and check that out, please. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.